Hello, everyone. Welcome. I think it's time we can get started here. I would like to start by saying a warm and heartfelt Happy Women's History Month to you all. Thank you. My name is Meg Metcalf, and I am the Women's, Gender, and LGBTQ+ Studies Librarian here at the Library of Congress. And I have the distinct honor today to welcome you to our screening of Radical Harmonies, Woodstock Meets Women's Liberation. So before we begin, a little housekeeping. This event will be recorded, so keep that in mind. Keep your questions nice. And on the topic of recording, I actually had the incredible opportunity yesterday to record Dee and Bowden oral history, and that will be kept here at the Library of Congress along with their film, which is already accessible in the motion picture reading room. Okay, so I'm going to introduce our esteemed guest who traveled all the way here for this amazing screening today, Dr. Bowden Sandstrom, a Community Pioneers honoree of the Rainbow History Project, lived in Washington, D.C. for 30 years? Yeah. So a leading sound engineer of the women's music circuit, founding Woman Sound in 1975, one of the first woman-owned sound companies, and the first technical producer for the major LGBTQ and women's rights rallies here in D.C. She received a PhD in ethnomusicology, taught at the School of Music at the University of Maryland, and has published numerous articles on women's music. And importantly, continues to do the archival work that is so important, especially today. Deep breath. Oh, you guys have long bios. So, Dr. Dee Mosbacher, said that correctly? Yes. Is a psychiatrist and an Academy Award nominated documentary filmmaker. She directed and produced 9 multiple award-winning documentaries, including Radical Harmonies, which won the Frameline International Film Festival Best Documentary Audience Award at its world premiere in 2002. So please join me in giving them some well-deserved applause as they introduce their incredible film.
I'm Dee Mosbacher, the director-producer of Radical Harmonies, and I'm just going to say just a couple of words, and I'll be joined for the Q&A after by co-producer Bowden Sandstrom. And so I won't take long just to say welcome. Thank you to the LOC for having us. We really appreciate it and really appreciate the opportunity to be recorded and to be included among your work here at the library and the archives. So I hope you enjoy the film. I will, as I said, I'll be back up with Bowden and we'll just take a few questions afterwards. I will say I really, really appreciate your coming. There were only a couple of days of publicity about the film for reasons that you might guess. So I'm glad you're here. Thank you. Well, thank you all so much again for coming, and we're just wanted to see if anybody needed any questions, and co-producer Bowden Sandstrom and I will be happy to answer them briefly. Yeah.
One question. Is that available for streaming?
Yes, it is, as a matter of fact. Yes, it's online at womanvision.org. If you go to womanvision.org, not only Radical Harmonies, but all of my films are available online. Oh, yes, I'm sorry. I forgot to repeat the question. The question was, is Radical Harmonies available online to screen? And yes, it is. It's at womanvision.org, and which has all of my films, and you can just has a link to Radical Harmonies. Anybody else got any? Yeah.
Hi, thanks so much for sharing your film. Can you say something about the genesis of it? How did you come up with the idea? And also what motivated you to share it with a new audience now?
Great. Do you want to start with that?
Yeah, well, Okay, let's see.
The genesis
The
and the
question
birth.
was, what was the genesis of the film, and why are we showing it at this particular time again? So thank you for those questions. Well, I was, well, as you saw, I was a sound engineer and created Woman Sound. And then when I finally decided that I didn't really want to do that anymore, I decided I wanted to become a professor. And I started getting a degree in ethnomusicology at the University of Maryland, and I wrote my dissertation on the Michigan Women's Music Festival. And in the process of trying to do research on the women's music, and by now it was 20 years later, 30 years later, I could hardly find any articles or information other than what I knew myself. And so I turned to my best friend, Dee, who we had met in the early 70s doing political work together. And I knew she was making films, and so I said, what are we going to do? There's no information on this. And Dee said,
I said, let's make a film. And I mean, I am the filmmaker of our relationship, which is, our friendship is over 50 years. And we had been through a lot together, but she came to me and just said, it's such a disappointment that we don't have more information about this. And we decided to make a film. And I had made several films before, and I had also been very, very touched by women's music because I actually even produced a couple of women's music concerts. In fact, I sacrificed the medial meniscus of my left knee crawling around trying to connect cables at Bowden's behest at All Saints Church in Washington, D.C. for a Meg Christian concert. I'd done a couple of other concerts. So I thought it would be a wonderful idea because it had touched me not only, just as the opportunity to be a producer, but also just had so resonated with me in the early 70s. And I said, let's do it. If I had known, and I think really in this case ignorance was bliss, because if I had known how many photographic, music, performance rights we would have to get together, I'm not sure this ship would have left the harbor. But it did, and it did because so many women who were in the film and heard about the film contributed money, time, their archives, and so many things that made it easier for us to do it and made it possible for us to do it. So, and as far as why is it back after, so we're 23 years later, fast forward, and Bowden and I were invited to show the film as part of Women's History Month at the Martin Luther King Library in D.C., and that was just about a year ago, almost exactly a year ago. And there was a really diverse audience of older and younger folks who saw it and were just blown away. They had no idea that this history had existed and, what had happened. And they were really inspired. And that is actually what we're finding now is that we've had, quite a few screenings and sold out audiences, and so there's been a lot of enthusiasm for its comeback, and people leave saying that they're just so inspired by the fact that a whole movement could be created out of nothing, just from scratch, and it's just they have left in tears, inspired by the possibilities, and particularly in this particular time. I just do want to add also that Radical Harmonies hadn't completely gone away because it had been used in classes by folks teaching women's history or LGBTQ plus history in colleges and universities across the country. Bowden was one of the people who used the film. So is there anything you want to add to that?
I don't think so.
Okay. Any other, yeah?
Do these musical events and women's music continue to evolve? What's happening now?
Yeah, it's not the same because, you know, as a movement evolves, and this particular one did, times changed and we were more accepted in the mainstream. So things changed, and it's you know, we don't have those kind of gatherings, the huge gatherings that we used to have. But yes, it still exists in some form. And in fact, Radical Harmonies is the opening show at the National Women's Music Festival this year, coming up in. It's showing on the 4th of July. So, yes, it's still happening, but not in the same way. I mean, we've gone through a period where we were much more accepted, and now we're in a period where things are quite different again.
Where is national music?
I'm sorry?
Where is the national?
In Madison, Wisconsin. Yeah. Oh, sorry, I'm not very good about the repeating. So you were asking how has the women's music movement or network evolved over the years, and what's happening with it today? Yeah. Any other questions, or? Okay.
I just wanted.
Yes.
Yeah, I just really wanted to thank Megan for bringing us
Yeah,
here.
thank you so much.
My first career was as a librarian. In fact, I worked at the Martin Luther King Library in Language and Literature, and I quit my job to go work on Cassie Culver's album. That was my first act, is how to learn how to be a sound engineer. And DC had such great unemployment at the time that I got to start a sound company on the unemployment, which was okay because you could have unemployment if you were starting a new career, so it was completely legal. But anyway, so we've bonded over our archival passion, and I really appreciate your efforts to get us here, because it was not easy. It was very difficult to create this, so thank you so much, and she's doing great work.